Okay, friends, today's conversation may be just a little spicy. Definitely in our Christian circles. And I think it's a conversation that we've all been having, or maybe we've been wanting to have, and we just don't know how. And I'd like to just be really upfront. I want to give you a little pre episode disclaimer so that you know my heart behind this conversation. It may feel convicting at times, but it is in no way intended to feel like it's condemning. And my goal is for this chat to feel like two women telling the truth about the places their lives have unraveled and how God met them there. This will touch on addiction, shame, identity, healing, and freedom. And I've been thinking a lot lately how there have been moments in our lives where we have realized the things that we thought were helping us cope were actually things quietly keeping us stuck. And for you, maybe it was overworking or overthinking. I know I'm definitely a recovering overworker and overthinker over here. Maybe it was perfectionism. I still have control issues. I'm a type A and B girl all wrapped in one, I think. And there have been times where we've like numbed out, right? Like maybe with food, scrolling on our phones, or just any distraction. And sometimes it's been alcohol. And not because anyone is living wild or reckless. Maybe it's because life is heavy and we were just trying to breathe. So today, this conversation is about what happens when someone gets honest enough to say, something about this isn't working anymore, and what happens next. What we're not doing is putting alcohol on trial. We're not handing women a predetermined conviction. My prayer is that we create a safe table where we can ask what is shaping us, listen for the Holy Spirit, and refuse both shame and minimization of the topics we're covering. After all, this is our real life and real struggles we've faced, or some of us may be facing. This content is also not a substitute for medical or psychological care. Okay, this is what I've seen, and maybe you have experienced this differently, something totally different, but it seems like to me that whenever Christians start talking about alcohol, the conversation gets pulled toward one extreme or the other. We live in one camp or the other. We're either no, this is a hard no, we are on rules and rights, or we talk about legalism and liberty. A firm conviction that Christians shouldn't drink, or an equally firm reminder that Jesus turned water into wine. But somewhere between those two sides, I wonder if we've stopped asking some of the deeper questions. Not simply, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to drink? Is alcohol okay? But what is this doing in me? Is it something I enjoy with freedom and gratitude? Or is it quietly becoming something I reach for when I'm overwhelmed, when I'm anxious, lonely, or desperate, or need relief? Or I just deserve this. I've had a hard day. I'm celebrating. It's social. And how do we recognize the difference between a freedom we enjoy and something that may be slowly forming us? Because that question isn't only about alcohol, it can be about work. It can be because we've been perfectionists for so long that we only know how to perform or how to produce, or that we use shopping as therapy, scrolling on our phones, that we use food as a coping mechanism, our busyness that we wear as a badge of honor, or our productivity. Anything we reach for when life gets heavy and we just want to exhale. And I want to be very upfront. This conversation is not to tell you what your personal conviction should be. I don't need to draw your line, and I'm not trying to. I don't need to become your conscience. I'm not trying to be your conscience. The older I get, the more convinced I become that the Holy Spirit is a much better shepherd than I could ever be. My hope is simply that this conversation helps all of us become a little more honest before the Lord. Because sometimes the things we reach for in our exhaustion slowly become the places we run before we run to Jesus. And I don't say that with shame. I say it because I've seen it in my own life. I've realized I'm asking different questions than I used to now. It's less of where is the line and more of who am I becoming? Less, is this permissible? And more heavy on the, is this helping me live awake, present, and responsive to Jesus? I don't want us to become so focused on defending our freedom that we miss the invitation here. Jesus may be asking to us personally something completely different, but this just opens the door for the conversation. I also don't want someone else's conviction turned into a rule God never gave us. That isn't freedom either. So today we are refusing the shame. There is to be no shame, and we're not going to minimize it either. We aren't dramatizing conviction. We aren't dismissing it. We're making room for honesty, for discernment, for grace, and for the real freedom Jesus has given us and the courage to follow him wherever he leads. Sometimes the bravest prayer we can pray is, Lord, if there is anything in my life quietly keeping me from the freedom you have for me, would you lovingly show me? So, once again, it's not shame, not fear, not legalism, not license, but formation, open hands and open hearts, and a willingness to let the Holy Spirit do what only he can do. This is not about winning the alcohol debate. It's about becoming women who are attentive to the voice of God in every area of our lives. And I think that's a brave conversation worth having. And I know that I really drug that out, but I know this can be tender. And I wanted to make sure I hold space for anything that we may feel while we're chatting. Welcome back to the Wildly Hopeful podcast. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found your way into this little corner of the world. Truly. Think of this as pulling up a chair at the table, a place where we bring our real questions, our real stories, and our real lives before Jesus. Around here, we believe he isn't intimidated by our questions. He isn't nervous about our wrestling, and he isn't afraid of places where we're still becoming. So we take scripture seriously. We ask honest questions. We laugh together. Sometimes we cry together. Or maybe that's just me. I cry. And we keep learning what it looks like to follow him with soft hearts, strong and steady faith, and the kind of wild hope that can only be found in him. Because following Jesus isn't lived out under perfect conditions. It happens on ordinary, mundane days, in mundane moments, in school pickup lines, in waiting rooms, around dinner tables, in seasons overflowing with celebration, and in seasons when we're simply trying to take the next faithful step. So whether you're driving somewhere, folding laundry, walking the dog, or stealing one quiet moment with your coffee before the rest of the house wakes up, I'm really glad you're here. For some of you, this may feel personal. It may bring up your own story or the story of someone you love. So listen gently today. Pause if you need to. Come back on another day if that's what caring for yourself looks like. And please, know my heart in this conversation. It's not medical advice. It's not meant to replace support from a qualified healthcare or mental health professional. If you are physically dependent on alcohol, suddenly stopping can be dangerous. So please seek appropriate medical guidance. There is no pressure waiting for you here. No accusations, no predetermined conclusions you're expected to reach today or anytime soon. Only an invitation to listen with honesty, curiosity, compassion, and grace. And today, we are joined by my friend Christy Osbornee. Christy is the founder of Love Life Sober, a double certified sobriety coach, author, and podcast host who helps women examine and change their relationship with alcohol through faith, neuroscience, compassionate coaching, and practical tools. She is the author of Love Life Sober, a 40-day alcohol fast to rediscover your joy, improve your health, and renew your mind. A grace-filled invitation for women to step away from alcohol for 40 days, to pay attention to what they discover, and reconnect with themselves and with Jesus. Christy's own journey didn't begin with a dramatic rock bottom moment. It began with the growing realization that alcohol was taking more from her and taking more from her life than what it was giving. Today, through her coaching, podcast, community, and 40-day alcohol fast, she helps women move beyond willpower and shame and begin understanding the habits, triggers, beliefs, emotions, and deeper longings underneath their drinking. She was born and raised in Los Angeles and is a graduate of the University of Southern California and Pepperdine University School of Law. After passing the California bar, she moved to London and worked in law, public relations, business development, and even at the UK Parliament before discovering her calling to help women find freedom from alcohol. She now lives in Sussex, England, with her husband, their 2 teenagers, and their Cavapoo Cooper. What I appreciate most about Christy is the tenderness she brings to this conversation. She isn't inviting women into panic. She's inviting them to pay attention, to become curious about what they reach for and what they may be asking it to provide, and whether it's even helping them live the life they genuinely want. Because ultimately, this isn't only a conversation about drinking. It's a conversation about freedom, formation, health, and healing, and becoming women who are attentive to the Holy Spirit and courageous enough to follow wherever He leads. I want to start us off with a quick prayer so that we can listen to these words. Our hearts will have the right posture, and we won't be offended or walk in offense. Jesus, thank you for the women listening today. Thank you for the women who might feel stuck, ashamed, or exhausted. Let this conversation feel like a door opening, not pressure closing in on them. Let honesty lead the way and let freedom feel possible. In Jesus' name, amen. Christy, welcome to Wildly Hopeful. I am so grateful you are here. And
Aw,
before we
thanks.
even dive in, I just have to say, I was thinking about you being in Europe, right? And because you're on Greenwich Mountain, or is it Greenwich time? Is that how it's not Mountain time? It's just Greenwich time.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I have always wanted to visit. Like, this has been since I was a little girl. And when I realized where you were, there was part of me that thought, why did I not say, you know what? I think this will just be an in-person chat. I think I'll just come to you, Christy. And then I was like,
You should
I
come on
know,
over.
right? I was like, we could be sitting in a little cafe with coffee and, just all the things. And it would be so pretty and probably just wonderful. But instead, we'll just bring the coffee to the podcast instead. And that's really the spirit of this show anyway. It's just for everyone to know they have a seat at the table. And
Love
yeah,
that.
it's just we sit down, we talk honestly um, about real things in life, about where we are, good things, hard things, the messy middle of life. Um, and your
Mhm.
story today, I think, will touch so many women's lives, even women that wrestle secretly and silently alone.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I am so thankful to be able to share this time with you, especially if we have friends that are wrestling this morning. Um, and before we even talk about sobriety or love life sober or any of the work you're doing now, I would honestly love to just start from the beginning. And
Okay.
so before we talk about any of the work, I just want to talk honestly um, about who you were, who Christy was before alcohol even entered the chat, before it even became a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question. Before alcohol entered the equation, I mean, I was a nerd. I love studying. Went to college and then law school and then did an additional graduate program in the UK. I guess that's kind of when alcohol started to sneak in. Um, but yeah, love to play anything with a racket. Grew up playing tennis, then that went to paddle, then pickle, all the things, love a racket sport, and love Jesus from a very young age, although partly due to my relationship with alcohol, that relationship kind of went by the wayside for a number of
Yeah.
years, but grew up in the church, loved Jesus, and, yeah, just I think a normal gal growing up in Los
Yeah,
Angeles,
in
yeah.
Los Angeles. Wow, I didn't realize you were in Los Angeles. So another place that so I have only been to okay, and I get this wrong every time. I think I have been is it San Diego where, like, the all wooden hotel, like, where the seals are? Is it San Diego or is that San Francisco?
Oh.
Seaport. Anyway, I've only been to one part of California. And, I also, though, I've been to Big Sur because I went to,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so
I went
pretty.
to Cabo, Los Cabos, went down and, like, we rented a car and drove down that part of the coast. So, I mean, I've been to those parts of California, but I've always, just wanna go. And I think every girl, right? Like, I wanna at one time, like, I have played out the whole Pretty Woman scene in my mind. Like, I wanna go to Rodeo Drive, anyway, big mistake, huge. So, anyway, I love that too. So now you live in a place where I've always wanted to go, and you have lived in a place that I've wanted to go. So that's so cool. Okay, but thank you for sharing that. Because I just always like to, anytime I have a friend on and introduce you guys to our friends and listeners, I just like them to know a little bit about who they're listening to. Like every one of us, no matter what our story is, we all have a real life story that led us to where we are.
Mhm,
Most of
mhm,
us, I think, talk from lived experience. We don't just talk because we
mhm.
think this is a topic that women need. We talk because we've lived it. And I like our friends to
Yeah.
know um, who lived a life and, um, struggled even before. Um,
Mm.
so
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that because honesty in any capacity just takes courage. And I love starting in the beginning because it just helps us see before struggle even entered the picture, right? Just a normal girl that liked to
Mhm.
nerd out and play any sport with a racket and just love life and love Jesus and then walk through some hard times. And that makes me curious about um, when on your journey did alcohol begin to shift from something social and you knew it was more than just
Mhm.
I'm a girl out having a good time with friends and it turned into something that started playing a bigger role in your life? Was there a moment or maybe even a season when you realized, wait a minute, this is something that maybe needs to change?
Yeah, so I talk about in the book this moment on March 9th, which I don't know when this is gonna air, but that was 6 years ago
Mhm.
yesterday. I had this moment where I woke up and just felt completely disconnected from Jesus. I was not being the wife or the mother I wanted to be, and I knew that the first thing to go was
Yeah.
alcohol. I hadn't done the work at that point, but now, since I've done so much work on it, in retrospect, I can see when the various upticks in the drinking was, and it was definitely being used for different jobs, right? So, in law school, it was being used to de-stress from studying. When we moved over to the UK, it was very much a social thing. Everything is done at the pub here, to meet new people. Then when I became a mom, it was that, like, whole mommy wine culture thing where it was, like, the reward and the treat for a long day
Yeah.
momming. And then when my own mom passed away, in 2018, it was definitely I was using it to numb grief. And so it kind of, like, took on these various jobs over the years and got to a point where it wasn't a rock bottom moment, like, I did not get a DUI. I know like, a lot of marriages struggle with, alcohol use and all of that, like, my marriage was not in a great place, but it wasn't over yet, so I say that because there wasn't this, like, massive rock bottom moment. It was just a completely disconnected feeling from who I was and who I wanted to be, and I laid there on that March 9th, like, morning looking through my Instagram, and I had a popular blog at the time for American expat women who had moved to the UK, and so I had a lot of glossy photos, making champagne look really pretty, going around Europe advertising where to eat and where to drink and where to stay. I was invited to be a commentator on Harry and Meghan's wedding at Windsor Palace, and I was, like, looking Windsor Castle. I was looking at all these photos, and I was just like, "This is all fake, and I don't even it's not even me, and I'm not even I look so happy in these photos, but I'm not." And so, I knew the first thing that had to go was alcohol, and I knew the first person I had to talk to was Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked that question because I often wonder how many women don't actually have like this traumatic rock bottom moment, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
have a rock bottom moment. Sometimes it's just that quiet realization that something just isn't working the way it used to be, or they are sitting there and there's a quiet realization that, wait a minute, this doesn't look like my life. I'm disconnected here. Something is not going on. I just don't feel like myself. So thank you again for telling that part of your story because I think that our friends listening, there are probably some friends listening that realize that pieces of them are possibly in what you just described.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful that you shared that. And at what moment did you realize, like, what did that realization feel like emotionally for you? Like, when you realized, "Wait a minute, I'm disconnected here. Something's not right. I'm not this girl that even can connect and love Jesus the way I know that I should." Like, how did that feel emotionally for you? Because I can't imagine when you're going from living your life a certain way, as we all do, and then you just transition into living life completely different. There's so many waves of emotions that come through.
Mhm.
What did that feel
Mhm.
like? How did that look for you?
Yeah, I love that question so much, and I think that so many gals can relate to this because, honestly, it was fear, right? Fear of what my life would look like if alcohol was out of the picture, fear of would I be fun, fear of would I be able to connect with my husband if it wasn't over a bottle of wine, fear of, like, what friends are gonna be my friends and what friends are gonna ditch me now because I'm, quote, unquote, "no fun," right?
Yeah.
And so, the gals that come into my community and do a fast with me or coach with me, this is the very first thing that we work on is what is under that fear. And normally what it is this goal of like I have to give up drinking forever or I have to give up drinking for 40 days. And if that feels like you've tried and you haven't been able to hit that like goal before, there's that fear. And then there's all those other fears that I just mentioned and more. And so that's
Yeah.
why I really love to start with, and I talk about this in the book, is like a positive place to start and a feeling space goal of how you wanna feel. Because
Mhm.
in that March 9th moment, I had no idea, like, the gifts and the abundance that was waiting for me on the other side of that. But there is so much, and when you ask a woman, like, "Why do you wanna give up alcohol for 40 days?" or "Why do you wanna, like, lay this down?" Instead of it being like, "Well, I don't wanna drink anymore, or I want to do this XYZ with my behavior," it's how do you wanna feel? Do you wanna have more peace? Do you wanna be more rested? Do you wanna have more energy? Do you wanna be able to show up differently in your relationship with Jesus? And that helps so immensely.
Yeah. I, had stopped drinking alcohol. I had probably had more of a rock bottom moment, but it was even in a rock bottom moment, it was still very much a generational thing that has plagued my family. I could literally cry. Like when first of all, Jess Connolly's my pastor, and that's how I
Aw.
even found you. And when I seen that, I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Aw.
Um, alcohol has plagued my family for generations. It's been a generational curse that I have stood in the gap and I'm interceding and
Amazing.
said, this is going to stop with me. And
Hallelujah.
so there was a time in my life, like I said, I probably had more of a rock bottom moment. Um,
Mhm.
a lot of our friends listening to the podcast don't know this side. And so this will be a first time sharing for me on my own story with alcohol.
That's
But
amazing,
because
babe. You should
it
be really
has
proud of yourself.
thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, because it has plagued my family for so long and almost destroyed my marriage.
Mhm.
And I literally heard the Lord Now, mind you, I owned my own medical practice. We had a
Mhm.
25-acre farm. We were the family that went to church. We drove a Mercedes. We looked like a family that people would think we had it all together.
Mhm.
But what goes on in somebody's home, a lot of us don't know, right? And we
Mhm.
don't know sometimes who people truly are. We only know the mask they wear to show
Yeah.
us that everything's fine because
Right.
we seem to wear that I'm fine necklace like a badge of honor. And
Mhm.
I decided one day that I have prettier beads to wear than
I
the
love
I'm
that.
fine necklace.
Yeah.
And so it had gotten to where my husband would stop and buy a bottle of bourbon on the way home, and we would
Mhm.
just drink a bottle, but yet I
Yeah.
would still get up and still
Yeah.
live life and I would teach class at church, and I was coping with grief and
Mhm.
using alcohol to cope with grief, and so I stopped drinking completely for a period of 8 years,
Oh,
and during that time, when you said I wanted to share just a small piece of my story, and I'll share bits and pieces throughout as we're talking, as the Lord leads. But I wanted to share that because the last thing you said was that emotion was fear. And
yeah.
that's one of the biggest factors, and we don't realize, and it should be a red flag for us, right? But when you're walking through the middle of something, those red flags don't always just go, hey, here I am. Like you should notice that there's something tugging at your heart. Um,
Right.
but it's what we're used to, and it's comfort, right? And
Yeah.
so I was having these red flags go off, but I still continued to drink because it made life easier to deal with what we were walking through. And then everyone that knew me. Okay, we would go to a particular pub every single Friday night after clinic all week. My husband's job was stressful. Both of our companies would go meet there. We could walk into that pub, and they immediately knew when they seen me what songs to cue for karaoke because they knew exactly what my set was going to be or what
Yeah.
people would ask for me to sing. They automatically knew what drink to have for me sitting on the
Mhm.
table.
Mhm.
And so people knew me in that social setting. So
Mhm.
when you say I'm gonna stop, or I've stopped drinking, everybody wants to know why.
Yeah.
That should be a cue for us
Mhm.
that alcohol is a socialized weapon sometimes, and we don't
Mhm.
realize it. That's being
Mhm.
used against us.
Yeah.
And it's why not? And you're not going to be as fun anymore. And you're always my fun friend. You hear all the things. And so then you're making a decision based on what you know is best for your life and what where God's leading you. But then you start questioning that decision, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
if I were smoking crack cocaine, I don't think any of my friends would ask me, why did you decide to stop smoking crack cocaine? I think I liked you better.
Yeah.
And I know that's like a really dramatic like analogy, but a drug is it's no matter
A
what it
drug
is,
is a
like,
drug, and
it's
all drugs do the same thing as far as, like, dopamine, it's just to what extent and what speed.
to what
Yeah.
extent, right? And so I began thinking, okay, this is how I knew it was a little deeper than me when I
Yeah.
started feeling instead of being excited for the path that God had me on to strengthen myself, my
Yeah.
marriage, and my relationships, I started feeling shame
Yeah. Yeah.
around why. So I had fear of the
Yep.
unknown.
Mhm.
And then shame came in, which is a completely different emotion that you would never expect when you start making healthier decisions. I'm eating
Mhm.
healthier in this season and nobody's shaming me for wanting to be healthier in my body, right?
Right.
So I'm so thankful and that's why I shared that because I just wanted you to know that it's very vulnerable when you share stories like you share, and it lets
Mhm.
you know that you truly have a heart for other women to heal and know life on both sides and a healthy balance, right? And
Mhm.
boundaries that are
Mhm.
safe. And it means so much to me. So, this conversation is very important to me. It wasn't haphazardly when I reached out to you and said, hey, Christy, speak? I believe in the message God's written on your heart for such a time as this. Like, that wasn't just lore, that wasn't just, like, content. That
Yeah.
was, this is personal,
Yeah.
and I am so thankful to know you and to have more friends and women that are willing to say the vulnerable things in our life and link arms so that families across this world can heal. So I'm
Yeah.
so thankful that you said that. And then because I think when we use something to cope, even when we don't realize at the time, because I never would have known, and maybe you did, um, to an extent, but when we're using something in our life to cope that we're not using anymore, that
Mhm.
doesn't help us like it helped us before, the emotions don't disappear that we were
Mhm.
trying to suppress, they come to the surface even more.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
now that one thing that was helping us a little bit that we could turn to
Mhm.
help us cope with grief or with
Mhm.
loss or with sadness or, whether it's jobs or relationships or um, just life not looking like we thought it would. When we don't have that substance that we were using to cope anymore, the emotions really flood us then.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
first thing you said was fear. But what
Mhm.
was the hardest emotion after fear that you had to learn to sit with once alcohol wasn't there helping you not only cope, but helping you numb out anymore? Then
Yeah,
how did you?
100%. Yeah. Grief, right? Because that was, like, when my, drinking really ramped up was after my mom passed away, and that
Mhm.
relationship was really complicated, and it was really layered, and so there was, like, layers to the grief because the relationship was layered, and there was a lot of anger, and there was a lot of sadness, obviously, but it was really complicated, and so it was a I realized that I didn't even start healing until several months, maybe even 6 to 8 months after I started drinking. I was, like, really looking at the hard things that were coming up, really taking my thoughts captive, really figuring out, like, the thoughts that were leading to that, like, that layered grief of, the layers of all the grief, and so it was only possible for me to do that when I was clear-headed, and it was only possible for me to do that when I was able to spend a lot of time with God looking at this.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear too all the time from gals that I coach or that are in my community, right? It's like we are not taught really I mean, pretty much no one I can think of that I've coached was ever taught, like, how to, like, sit in the suck as we we like to call it, or sit
Yeah.
with those hard emotions. It's make that emotion go away as fast as possible, right? Or numb it out in order to not feel it. It's not actually get to the root of it, right? And this is why all of the work starts in our mind. It all starts with our thoughts. It's what the book is all about is how to take those thoughts captive.
Yeah.
And the journey with alcohol I think is really unique in that we've all heard take your thoughts captive, right? Second Corinthians. But I think when you are dealing with a voice that is a craving voice, which is the wine begging you to drink it, it's easier to take that thought captive because it's so loud. And so you can
Yeah.
start looking at these thoughts, you can start asking yourself, is it really true? Is it really going to help me relax? Is it really going to help me connect? Is it really going to help me numb? Is it really, and maybe for a period of time, but how long? And you can get really, really clear about those thoughts. And then when you start taking those thoughts captive and renewing your mind about alcohol, then the real fun begins because you can start looking at your thought life for everything else. And that is when the game changes. And that is so fun.
Yeah. 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 I love that you said that, taking our thoughts captive, because that is one of the things, you hear a lot of voices, especially when you walk through changes that people don't understand,
Yeah.
and it may be triggering something in them and they don't understand.
Yeah.
There are a lot of voices that come at
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
And so that truly is one of the most important things that we can do is to just remember to put on the mind of Christ and to take those thoughts captive. And,
Mhm.
I always remind myself that even sometimes when good thoughts come, if they're not thoughts that glorify God, that would give him the glory, maybe that's not necessarily a thought from him, like, this
Yeah.
may just be my flesh. Like, sometimes it's not always just the enemy talking to us. We can talk to ourselves as well, and we have to take those thoughts captive. And I also want you to know before we even go any further, and I did this very delicately as I was preparing this chat for us today. um, I have already given a disclaimer before we started our episode about how tender this could be and how
Mhm.
triggering for our friends and listeners. But what I didn't do was honor that with you. We just kind of jumped both feet right in. And so, just to know publicly that I honor your heart appropriately and steward your heart well. If there's anything that I ask that may be too leading or something you're just not ready to talk about, or I just want you to know that you are in a safe place too, not just our friends, that you're in a
Thank
safe
you.
place at this table with me and you can say, let's just we don't have to go there today. And I
Yeah.
get it. And I just want you to know that you only have to share what's comfortable with you too. And because as soon as we got connected this morning and I looked in your eyes, I'm just one of those people. I love everybody I meet. You're my best friend. Like you have a ride or die when you meet me. I do that to a fault sometimes. But because I've lived a journey kind of similar to yours, um, I feel that kindredness. And so
Mhm.
I feel like I'm talking openly to my best friend. And so I may go deeper or press deeper than what we could
That's
or
okay.
should.
I'm an open book.
So you just make sure
Okay.
that I honor your heart well too.
Thank you.
Um, so back to what we were saying. So most big life changes begin with an honest moment.
Mhm.
They begin with an honest moment behind closed doors with us and God before we ever even, sometimes before we ever even realize there's
Mhm.
a moment happening with us and God. We just see it happening with us, but all along He's been bringing us to that moment, right?
Oh, yeah.
And a moment where we realize we can't pretend anymore.
Yeah.
And so that is what I want our friends listening with us today to know that you do not have to pretend anymore. And even though there may be things that you don't feel comfortable saying in front of loved ones, it could be a spouse, it could be a parent or a child or your best friend, a coworker, that you may not feel comfortable speaking with them about right now, and you feel like you have to perform or there is a certain mask you have to wear. I just want you to know that you are in a safe place with the Lord, and if you've realized that moment in your heart that you don't have to pretend anymore, you are in a safe place with Him that can stop today. And so, with that said, Christy, I was going to ask you, was there a turning point even after you stopped using alcohol to cope with grief and to numb out that you still were like, okay, now that all of these emotions are flooding in, I'm dealing with the grief of the loss of my mom. Maybe even dealing with loss of some friendships, maybe even because you were living life a certain way there in the UK and that social things can be different. They can look different. Even when people don't mean to make us feel different when they
Mhm.
first notice we aren't drinking, sometimes it becomes a bigger thing than what
Mhm.
we try to make it. Other people
Mhm.
make it a big thing
Mhm.
because they're
Yeah.
trying to understand.
Yeah.
So even after you started this journey, was there any other pivotal moments where you were like, okay, I'm on the right path here and I'm doing the right things, but something still has to shift because this still just doesn't feel right? Or was it more seamless and you were just able to, it started and God was just leading and it just went smoothly the whole way?
No, I mean, it was definitely a process, right? Like, I still had
Yeah.
cravings, I was still figuring out why I was drinking. It was a like, I hate the word journey because I think it's so overused, but, like, it was a journey. It was an
Yeah.
exodus. I'm using the word exodus. It was an exodus, right? It was just,
Yes. Yes.
um but I mean, when you ask about pivotal moments, I did all this during COVID, which is really special
Oh,
and
yeah.
interesting.
Hey, that's
Yeah,
a time when most people they're not most, I shouldn't say that, let me back that up. A
a
lot
lot,
of
a
people
lot,
turn
a
to
lot.
alcohol during that time of
Yeah.
isolation, yes.
Yeah. So there was that, which I love to joke, that was like God sending me my own little personal, like, at home rehab, right?
Yeah,
Because I didn't need to have a medical detox, but I needed all of my social outings to be shut down, and I needed to, like, be in a place where I didn't have to answer questions. And so
yes,
a lot of gals don't have that opportunity, and so one of the things I work with them when I coach them is, like, how can we take things out of your calendar? How can we protect this kind of like a newborn baby in the beginning stages? But another pivotal moment was the December of 2020. So I stopped drinking in March. And at the end of that year, I lost a very dear girlfriend of mine, 40 years old, 3 little kids, 3 little girls. Our youngest met together in kindergarten, and I had the picture, of driving at that point, I was in Florida with my in-laws because we escaped the really strict lockdown rules of the UK, which were ridiculous.
Mhm.
So I was staying with my in-laws, and I pictured myself getting in my father-in-law's car. I pictured myself going to the bar. I pictured myself ordering a massive glass of Sauvignon Blanc. I could literally see the sweat on the glass, and I was like, "I have to have that glass because this hurts so bad." I was, like, sitting on their staircase, doubled over, and all I could think was, "I have to get to that glass of Sauvignon Blanc." And thankfully, I had enough time under my belt and enough God, like, under my belt, I guess, and my next thought, praise the Lord, was, "You've done that before. You've done that before a million times, and you know exactly how that turns out. And it's not gonna make this go away. It's only gonna make it harder. It is not gonna bring her back. It is only gonna make this so much harder."
Yeah.
And so when people ask about, "Oh, it was, it looked so easy for you," there was all these little moments like that where
Mhm.
it was like, it's that old neural pathway. It's the thing that I did for a very long time. It made a lot of sense in the moment, right? I was using the coping skills that I had.
Mhm.
Um, but thank the Lord, it was like I had new coping skills, right? And it
Yeah.
was like a lot of hot baths, a lot of long walks, yelling at God, crying at God, a lot of time in the Bible, a lot of time, doing these things and then in community, which is so
Mhm.
important,
Yeah.
um, that you learn how to get through those really, really tough times without this thing that will numb it all out and then only make it worse the next day.
Yeah. I'm so thankful that you shared that. And the reason I asked, I know it probably seemed like I asked that question different ways multiple times, but I just wanted to sit in that for a minute because I really wanted to. I want, the last thing I want to do is introduce this to our friends in like a 1 hour session, right? Like our
Mhm.
1 hour chat, and them not feel like they were seen, because I
Yeah.
truly believe that's what the Lord had us have this conversation for today, is for our friends to know that they are deeply known and
Yeah.
loved. And Adonai Elroy sees
Mhm.
them. The God who
Yeah.
sees our friends, and they've not been forgotten. And I
Mhm.
couldn't help but I felt the pain in that story, but it was also, you know how God will let us feel the both and? I felt the
Yeah.
joy and the grief while you were telling that story, and I
Yeah.
couldn't help but cry because I felt so deeply for our friends as well,
Yeah.
because that is one of the things that truly happens to us, and it doesn't matter what the substance is, and I just wanna say that very clearly right now for our friends. Alcohol has been our mechanism, our coping mechanism, but it could be shopping. It could be
Mhm.
food. It could be
Mhm.
an unhealthy relationship with food. It could be unhealthy relationships with one another that you continue to get placed in.
Yeah.
Today, we're talking about alcohol, but it could be so many things. And so,
Mhm.
when you are on a path of healing,
Mhm.
the enemy is always things are always going to come up, right? He loves to set snares for us. And the Bible tells us that. And snares are traps. They're truly like, imagine being a raccoon and being caught in a trap. They truly are traps that are not designed for us to get out of easily, because he
Mhm.
knows that. And
Mhm.
so, how difficult it is when you're walking that journey and you are trying to be um, there for yourself and present in the
Mhm.
moment and healing. And then you lose your friend, your best friend.
Mhm.
The first thing we want to do is go back to what felt good, what
Mhm.
brought me comfort, what that coping mechanism was. And that's why I wanted to say that. If you're listening to our conversation right now and you feel like you sort of identify, but maybe not, because alcohol wasn't your problem or problem that was plaguing you at the time or even today, I want you to know that this is for any substance that creates healing or promotes itself as God in our life,
Yeah.
and it can be anything.
Yep.
And I felt that so deeply for our friends. It was almost like I could feel some of our friends' hearts as I was listening to your story, and they really connected with that. And I just want to be a safe place today. Um, I am not here, nor is this conversation here to fix anything, but there are people like Christy out there that have dedicated their life to coaching and to training. And if anything comes up in this conversation before we end, I will love for Christy to give you her information that you could reach out to her. And I'll even put in the show notes some other resources that I'll ask Christy for, maybe that will be helpful. And I just want you to know that we are not opening a door today and that you're being left behind. That I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. I've never done this on an episode, but I will be here. And make sure that we give you resources to hold your hand along the way, because I know how difficult it can be. So we're going to move on. Okay. We're going to go into wine culture, because I love that you said that. Wine mommy culture. And even if you're
Mhm.
not a mom, even if you're a single woman, wine culture with us girls is a big deal. And if wine isn't your thing, listen, it's margarita culture. It's one of the two. It's either wine or it's margaritas. Typically, I mean, yeah, girls, we drink beer sometimes, but that typically isn't our jam, right? It's, it's a martini or it's this or that. But we're going to move on to wine culture, because I think one thing that's really interesting is how normalized alcohol, especially wine, because
Mhm.
Jesus drank wine, right? Wine's all in the
Mhm.
Bible. So
Mhm.
so the world is always going to be the world, right? We know that the world is going to do the world. They're going to do what the world does. In the church and in Christianity, when the enemy comes in, right? We always heard that passage, and I used to think that passage, it said, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Lord raises up a standard against him. But there's
Mhm.
actually punctuation in the Bible, and now that I've studied this out, I love that passage where I used to not know if I did, because I was like, how is that really helpful to me? But that really is when the enemy comes in, and think of that like a comma or an M dash. The
Mhm.
Lord comes in like a flood. So it's the
Mhm.
Lord that floods in when the enemy comes, not the enemy's flooding, because he can't flood anything. So the Lord comes in and floods and raises up the standard. And
Mhm.
that's like he's letting us know he's there for us. Even
Yeah.
in these hard moments, he will come in like a flood. He's a gentleman, and he will walk alongside us, and he will embrace us and carry us. But when it comes to the enemy messing with his kids, he's just like any of our parents would be, or a grandmama, or an aunt, or he comes in like a flood, and he takes care of his kids. And so anyway, it has become so normalized in our culture, mom wine culture, girls' nights, celebrations, hard day, whatever it is. At what point did you, Christy, begin questioning that role? Like, because you brought up the mommy wine culture, and I think this is a really good one for our girls listening. That even when everybody around you said it was normal, and I even think this, like, I think I wanna make sure I say this, like, I think wine culture, mommy wine night, like, sip and paint, like, all the things you think of just becomes like a personality trait for some
Mhm.
women. I mean, we have wine clubs, I mean, we have, like, we do the thing, you know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna really do it, especially if we love it. And so we have the memes, like mom needs wine. We have jokes about mommy just needs a glass of wine. I mean, you see those big, big glasses of wine. It's like, this isn't even a big enough glass of wine, to get me through today. And everybody around us says it's normal, the way alcohol gets framed for self care after a
Mhm.
long day.
Mhm.
When did you start noticing that cultural narrative, and how do you think it shapes women now about the way we think about drinking, especially wine? Because, like I said, in the church, I think we don't see a problem with an overabundance of drinking
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah. Well, again, I was, like, doing this at the beginning during COVID, and I'll never forget, I was sitting scrolling, as so many of us were during that time, and there was
Yeah.
a Tropicana orange juice, campaign splattered all over the Instagram. And it had a bunch of actresses, Molly Sims and, I think Gabrielle Union, maybe, don't quote me, but I think she was in it. Anyways, all these actresses, and basically the whole shtick of the ad was pour yourself a mimosa in your bathroom or in your garage and hide away from your kids or whatever you're dealing with because you're locked in at home, and have this kind of, like, me moment, like it was a play on the word mimosa. And I
Yeah.
just thought to myself, that is the last thing that any mom needs right now, is to be drinking while hiding from her children, because we know how highly addictive alcohol is. We know that one mimosa leads to 10. We know that that makes you crabby. It makes you have 0 patience and all the rest of it. And so that was the first time where I saw the glaring, like, "Oh my gosh, this is nuts." And then it was like the floodgates were opened, right? Then it was homeschool supplies in the grocery aisle was the wine aisle, and every single Mother's Day card, and every single any birthday card, anything, or just walk down the aisle at Target, right? I mean, I think there's something crazy like 80,000 actual like wine mom items on Etsy. It's something bananas.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's like you end up making it sounds like my 16-year-old daughter, "Don't make it your whole personality." Um,
Yeah.
but we do.
We
We
do,
do.
yeah. And without
Yeah.
even realizing it's been become our whole personality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing
Yeah.
is that it glorifies it. And it makes the narrative really, really loud, which is why it comes back to the fear, right? Breaking free from like how if we're going to be different. But like that is what Romans 12:2 tells us to do, right? Is not look like the rest of the world. And so
Yeah.
even though everywhere you look, it's telling you that like moms and wine go together or whatever, as you said, girls' night, book club, all the things it's like, what do you actually need? What do you actually need? It's a question that I ask my clients every single day. Like, what do you need? Do you need rest? Do you need connection? Do you need a break? Do you need fresh air? Do you need protein? Like, what do you need? Because it's not alcohol. Feels like it does. Feels like it does because you get that 20-minute, and it is only 20 minutes. And if you don't believe me, look it up. It's in the book. Artificial high slap of dopamine to the face that makes you feel like your shoulders come out of your ears. That's why we drink it. But it only
Yeah.
lasts for 20 minutes. And then your system is flooded with dynorphin. It brings you completely down. It's a depressant, ruins your gut health, destroys the serotonin. And so, anyways, my point of all of that is, and I could go on, is any reason you think that you're drinking it for, it does the opposite. And if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, I don't know if I believe her, that's totally fine. I wouldn't have believed me either. But just be open to the possibility that it might not be giving you the thing that you're drinking it for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good, and, I love that you said that about the 20 minutes because, girl, I felt like Wonder Woman for just a minute, right?
Yeah.
And then, it never failed that I mean, I would start crying, like, it never fails. After about that short period of time,
Yeah.
anything that we were drinking for
Yeah.
really comes flooding back in.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that we obviously, we don't see that in the
Yeah.
moment,
Right.
and it always comes back in. That's why we have that remorse the next day, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of women who are using alcohol that don't even realize it
Mhm.
because they're just burnt out.
Yeah.
It's not even just their coping mechanisms at this point. They're burnout, and it is because they need something. When Elijah went through that big battle and he hid away, and when he was going through that big battle and hid away, and the Lord found him up against the tree, and he was very depressed. I mean, he wanted to end it. And the Lord was like, now this is just Brandy from the south side of the kingdom. This is just a little way I'm going to interpret this passage right here. You might want to read this one for yourself. But it was like, God was like, hey, you need a snack and you need a nap. And
Yeah.
so we need God. And he needed a nap. Like he needed a
Yeah.
rest, right? Get yourself something to eat. You haven't eaten anything. Like you need some protein. Like what's going on with you? And I love that you said that because I do think more and more women who are taking control of their bodies and their physical health, right? Even if they haven't gotten to a point where they're even working on because I think a lot, like, I don't know. I see women in two different camps. Sometimes we work on both of them at the same time, but
Yeah.
most of the time, I see women who are really working right now on their mental health, mentally and spiritually and emotionally. And then once they start feeling better mentally, they'll work on their bodies physically. And then there's
Mhm.
some women in the camp who they need to start seeing the outer physical, I feel better. And then they start working on their mental health. But I love that you talked about the gut health and what it does, especially to our nervous system. I know that so many of our girly pops are really big into nervous system regulation. And
Mhm.
if any of us have seen the real, I know we have, if you're on any social media, it's like my husband doesn't have to worry about me having an affair. He needs to worry about me adding one more step to my daily routine. And we
Yeah.
have our red light therapy. We have our oil, we have everything we put on our face. We have our skincare. We do all the things. We're all eating healthy. We're all trying to get 130 grams of protein. Lord help us to put cottage cheese in our eggs and yogurt and substitute for sour cream because we are really trying hard to get the protein in there. And we're doing all these things for our bodies,
Mhm.
but still introducing alcohol
Mhm.
and wondering why we're still inflamed
Yep.
and wondering why our diets aren't helping our gut health. I'm doing all the anti-inflammatory things. I'm taking all
Mhm.
the supplements. I'm doing the exercise. And I'm not even talking right now about like the mental, I'm talking even physically when we're
Mhm.
doing all the things and we still don't feel good. And it never even comes to our mind in the beginning to think about, could there be poison in this alcohol that I'm
Yep.
drinking?
Yep.
I'm on a Mediterranean diet or I'm on a keto diet or I'm on paleo and I only drink water, but then I also drink like white liquor because I can drink that if I'm on paleo and keto. And so I love that you brought that up about our nervous system and our gut health, because that is a completely different part of this
Mhm.
component that has to get in order for our
Mhm.
bodies to ever start healing. And, some of my friends won't eat a carb or
Mhm.
don't eat a piece of cake, but will drink a shot of tequila or a
Mhm.
martini. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe we should talk about this for just a second. Like, let's bring this in
Mhm.
because one of those is no more healthy than the other. So
Yep.
I'm so glad you said that. And I talk to a lot of women. I have a lot of friends, especially in the church. Weeded out. Where did that just go? Oh my gosh. Okay. So, Christy, I could sit here and talk to you all day long. And I know that many of our friends listening are navigating faith alongside their healing journeys, as we just talked about. What would you say to the woman who loves Jesus but feels stuck in her coping pattern? She's not sure how to change it. And I want you to answer this kind of reflective and think about it like if you were sitting across the table from her and talking to the version of yourself that was still stuck in that cycle with alcohol, the woman who maybe felt tired and overwhelmed or unsure of what to do. What would you say to her in this moment because she's being really hard on herself?
Yeah, I would say you're not alone. I would say that you're not alone. I felt very alone when I first started out. It is why I wanted to do this work because no matter what your drinking looks like, whether you have been drinking for decades, you just started a few years ago, you've had stops and starts, there are women exactly like you. There are women who are finding it really hard to stop drinking. There are women who are just anything that you can think of are drinking for similar reasons to you. You're not too far gone. Your brain is literally made to change. It's got how God literally made our brains is to be able to rewire them. And so you're not alone. It's why started this community. Almost every single woman that comes into the community is like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that there are other women like me." Rock bottom drinkers, non-rock bottom drinkers, the gambit, right? All ages and stages. Young moms, empty nesters, all who thought that they were the only one, all who thought they could never bring this up in their small group, all who thought like this would be a taboo topic to talk about in their church. And
Yeah.
so you're not alone. It's literally what I keep what it's yeah. you're not alone.
Good. That is perfect. And I love that you said that. If our friends want to reach out to you, how can they get connected with Christy? And could you just give, before we let you go and honor your time, could you just tell us the name of your book and what's going on and all the things, Christy, so our girls can get connected with you?
Yeah, it's super easy. So it's everything is at Love Life Sober. The book is Love Life Sober. It's a 40-day alcohol fast. The podcast is Love Life Sober. The community is Love Life Sober. Instagram is Love Life Sober with Christy. And then I'm Christy Osborne on Substack. But if you just even Google Love Life Sober or stick Love Life Sober into Amazon, you'll be able to find the book and get connected with me.
Perfect. And I have to tell you, we will have to have a part 2. We will have
Okay.
to get connected and have a part 2 so that we can finish this conversation. Thank you so much for
Yeah, of
being here. And
course.
thank you for being vulnerable and willing to share your story. It's changing lives.
Oh, thank you,
It's
babe.
so life giving. Thank you so much.
So nice to meet you, and you'll have to come
And
on my podcast and tell your story as well.
I know. Thank you. I think one of the most powerful things that we can do in life is just simply tell the truth. Not like crazy dramatic, not shame-filled truth, just honest. Honesty, just truth. Sometimes freedom begins with a quiet realization that something in our life just isn't bringing the peace we hoped it would. And the courage to ask that question, even softly, even privately, is often the very beginning of healing. So if today's conversation stirred something in you, I want you to know there's no pressure here. Just curiosity, just honesty, and the invitation to pay attention to what is bringing life into your life and what not might be anymore. Friend, wherever this conversation met you today, remember, there's always room for you at this table. Soft hearts, steady faith, and wild hope. You're not broken for wanting peace. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply become honest about what's no longer serving in our life. Grace always meets us there. And if this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to connect with Christy and the work she's doing through Love Life Sober. And if this episode encouraged you, consider sharing it with a friend. You never know who might need this conversation today. And if you would show us love and give us those 5 stars, our review, you have no idea how much that means. And it pushes this message out so that more women can have the message to hold on to, wild hope. Until next time, bye.